Hello, I'm Sam Shinta with LeaderEthics. Without question, the November 2022 election campaign has been expensive and divisive. There has been an onslaught of campaign ads that are murky and often misleading on both sides of the political debate. In this environment, it is difficult for voters to really get to know their candidates. That's why I'm delighted to present today's video program, a dialogue about ethical leadership with Brad Pfaff and Richard Kyte. This conversation is intended to give voters a refreshing and different approach to learning more about views of the candidates before we cast our votes, specifically about matters related to servant leadership and ethical leadership. This program was pre-recorded, and this is the first public viewing. Please note, we reached out several times to the other candidate in the 3rd Congressional District, Derrick Van Orden, but did not hear back from his campaign. And now, a dialogue about ethical leadership with Brad Pfaff and Richard Kyte.
Greetings. I'm Lee Roche, Executive Director of LeaderEthics, and I'm pleased to be bringing to you today's program, a dialogue with Brad Pfaff, a candidate for the 3rd Congressional District of Wisconsin. This program is brought to you by Community, a collaborative effort involving media partners, the Crosse Tribune, WKBT News 8000, WIZM News Radio, WXOW and LeaderEthics. This program is a nonpartisan presentation. The participating sponsors do not individually or collectively endorse any candidate, nor should the candidates imply endorsement by their participation in this program. Both candidates have been invited to participate in this program format. Today's program will involve a dialogue with the candidate, Brad Pfaff, regarding 4 key principles of ethical leadership: to be truthful, transparent, a unifier, and willing to work to represent their entire constituency. The moderator for today's program is Richard Kyte, Director of the D.B. Reinhart Institute for Ethics and Leadership and Endowed Professor of Ethics at Viterbo University in La Crosse. He teaches a variety of courses with ethical issues in business, healthcare, law, politics, and the environment. He has published and lectured widely on topics related to justice, virtue, and ethics in practice. Please welcome Richard Kyte.
Thank you, Lee. It's my pleasure to be moderating this discussion on behalf of Community and LeaderEthics, and I'm really pleased to introduce Brad Pfaff. Brad currently serves as the Wisconsin State Senator for District 32. He previously held the position of Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. He is the Democratic nominee for United States Congress in Wisconsin's 3rd District. Thank you for joining us, Brad.
Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you, Lee, and thanks everyone for giving me the opportunity. It's a pleasure.
As Lee mentioned, in LeaderEthics, we adhere to 4 principles, and that's what we want to talk to you about, is these 4 principles. And I'd like to start with truth, because we think it's the foundation of everything that we do, is that our elected officials should be truthful.
That's right.
So I want to ask you, given the way in which people tend to be so skeptical about the possibility of even getting at truth, how do you determine what information is true and what information should be shared?
Well, that's a very good question, and I will say this, is that I think truthfulness needs to be something that we all should aspire to. And that's what we're seeking to get at. It's a basic value of who I am. Raised here in western Wisconsin, with common sense and recognizing the fact that we need to work together in order to get things done. And the thing is to listen to one another. I think all of that is extremely important as we continue to find the truth. To realize the fact that there is no one size fits all as well. And I grew up in a rural area, just north of La Crosse here, about 25 miles. I grew up on a family farm. My family's been farming in this area since they came to this country in the 1800s. And the thing is this, when you live in a rural area, your closest neighbor is a quarter of a mile down the road, if you're lucky. You don't have time to play politics. You don't have time to get into ideological food fights. I mean, you trust your neighbor because your neighbor's there with you. And when your cattle get out, your neighbor's there to help you. When your community is celebrating an anniversary, people from the community come together to celebrate. They come together to mourn. I mean, that's about building relationships with people, and that's based upon trust, and that's looking beyond, just some topic. Truthfulness is obviously the importance of an issue but also truthfulness is just that bond that you have with someone, that belief in that individual that that they're not trying to play games with you, and that's to me what's so very, very important, is just trying to seek information, but also building relationships with people that creates a bond, a form of trust, and that trust you get truthfulness.
Well, if truthfulness is dependent on these relationships you form, then I think there's some worry that once our representatives get to Washington, they lose that bond,
right.
They lose that relationship. So
Right.
how do you maintain it?
Well, I think you maintain it by, first of all, by being here, knowing this area, willing to reach out to people of different ideas, different thoughts, different religion, different ethnicity, different gender, whatever it may be, different social economic status, and learning from them, and wanting to hear their thoughts and idea, spending time within their community, building that goodwill, but also reaching out and wanting to build a level of trust with them, and quite frankly, putting the politics aside. It really is, and I'll just say it, it is a shame that, everything boils down to either a Democratic label or a Republican label, because that's not who the people here are in western and central Wisconsin. I mean, these are honest, hardworking, God-fearing, patriotic people. And what they want from their elected officials, may it be Republicans or Democrats, is just someone that will share their values, someone that will listen to them, someone that will come to their community and want to. They want to trust, but that means that the elected official also needs to put in the time and the effort as well. So trust is about truthfulness. It's about building relationships, and it's about believing the goodness in people, not just the negativity.
Well, and I think trust is also really dependent on transparency, right? And this is another principle for leader ethics, is we really think that our elected officials should be transparent with public information.
They sure should be.
But with all the news sources available to us now, it seems like that it's hard to keep any information confidential. On the other hand, there's some distrust that lots of times the important factors in decision making are kept from us. Like there's sometimes a hidden agenda, or there might be motivations that we don't know. So how, as an elected official, do you ensure to your constituents that there isn't a hidden agenda, or do you reveal it, or do you operate in a different way to reassure them? How do you maintain transparency?
Accessibility. You have to be accessible. You have to be accessible. You have to be able to explain and justify the decisions that you made. And the thing is this, and you have to be truthful. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you are available for your constituents, that you're hearing from them, that you're putting their interest first. And if you do take a vote, and there are times when you're going to take a vote that people are going to say, well, why did you vote a particular way? You have to explain it. You can't hide from it. You can't run from it. You have to be able to explain it. And, I'm proud of the record that I've been able to have in the Wisconsin State Senate, because, I've traveled this district and I heard firsthand from the people of this district. And I also recognize that, we need to find consensus. And consensus is something that, quite frankly, our politics has moved away from, and that's unfortunate. Consensus is where, we sit down with those that we may not always agree with, and we try and find some common ground, and we listen as much as we speak. And I think that's extremely important to do. And unfortunately, in the state legislature right now, we don't have a situation like that where we're trying to build consensus and where we're trying to find common ground. But I'll be upfront with you. I represent a state Senate district that is 50-50. It is a jump ball. It could go either way. And so for me to be able to feel that I'm doing a good job representing this district is I need to find consensus. And that means I have to be very busy and reaching out to as many constituency groups as I possibly can in order to understand their perspective, but also then be able to share with what I've heard from other perspectives so then they can have an idea as well and then be able to try and find some common ground.
One of the things that we're really concerned about is actions that might be hidden from us among members of Congress. There was a story in the New York Times just yesterday about how it looks like certain members of Congress had investments in areas that they oversee.
Yeah.
And this is a real concern. Should there be more robust kind of disclosure of financial investments in other areas where representatives might have conflicts?
For sure. I mean, we should not have a situation where a member of Congress or some type of elected official or governmental official has access to information that none of us have access to when it comes to investments and financial transactions. That we shouldn't have a situation like that. So, I'll just absolutely be clear. I have been very forthright as far as, filing all my financial information that I have. And I do not believe that, members of Congress should have inside information or information that the rest of us don't have when it comes to any type of financial dealings that are taking place within the stock market or bonds or any other private sector. Now, there is an oversight responsibility that Congress has, and I recognize that, but there's a fine line between, doing oversight and at the same time having information that the rest of us don't have.
I want to move on to our third principle, and this is about being a unifier, and because we think it's so important that our officials be unifiers rather than dividers.
That's right.
And so I want to ask you, if you were elected, what practices would you take to serve as a unifier in Congress?
Well, first of all, I view myself as a moderate, and I am someone that, I also am someone that has a very even temperament, and I want to hear from people from all sides. And so I am someone that wants to be able to reach, if I get the opportunity to represent this seat in the United States House of Representatives, I will be wanting to hear from my colleagues, in both political parties, their thoughts and their perspectives on issues. This district for the last 42 years has been represented by two members of Congress, one a Republican, Steve Gunderson, who represented this seat for 16 years, the other Congressman Ron Kind, who represented this seat for the last 26 years. Both of them, even though they were different political parties, put the interest of this district first by finding common ground on issues. And I think that is the right role model. Those two individuals represented this district, and the people and the communities of this district, they put their interests first. And that's what I will always do. Because the thing is this, the needs of this district do not just fit neatly into the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. It fits into all parties. And that's what we need to be able to do. So it starts out by welcoming different thoughts and ideas to my office. It starts out by asking if I can come and meet with individuals that share a different perspective that I have in order to learn their perspective, but also then to give them the opportunity to learn more about me in this district. It really boils down to conversation with one another. And Rick, I will say this. This is probably the biggest thing that separates myself from my Republican opponent for Congress is that Derrick Van Orden does not have the temperament, the judgment, or the character to serve in this office. He has not demonstrated that he can reach across the aisle and find common ground. As a Wisconsin state senator, I reached across the aisle, found common ground, was able to invest in roads and bridges, provide much needed funding for broadband, the largest investment in state's history, and at the same time provide tax relief at the tune of $2 billion. I did this while at the same time staying true to the principles of myself, my community, and of this district by continuing to advocate for expanded Badger care, continuing to advocate for additional funding for education. You can continue to push for and advocate for additional, but you don't always have to, lead with the negative. You can always also find common ground on issues that are important.
In your impression, do your constituents want unification, or do they want more division? Because it seems to me, when I'm just seeing ads, and I'm not talking about I'm just talking about ads in general, political ads, the most common word I hear is fight, as if that's what people are responding to. They want somebody to fight for their interests, but that seems to be opposite of gaining consensus or doing something that brings people together. So how do you do that? How do you can you give any examples of how you've been a unifier in this kind of context?
Well, I've been a unifier for the simple reason that I had the opportunity to serve as our state Secretary of Agriculture, and I absolutely love that job. I mean, that was a job, that was a dream job for me. From where I come from, my background, and my family background, to be asked by Governor Evers to serve as our state Secretary of Agriculture, it was a dream come true. And I traveled the state and I heard firsthand from our family farmers and our rural residents. I stood in cheese plants, I was in feed mills, livestock yards, I was in machine sheds, diners, sat at kitchen tables with family farmers, not just Democrats, but also Republicans and independents. And I heard firsthand their concerns, the anxieties that they had. And I took those concerns back to the state legislature. But rather than wanting to move forward and to hear what was happening in the countryside, these legislators, unfortunately, decided to play partisan politics. And they voted me down as Secretary of Agriculture. And that was a real disappointment. But 1 year to the day of me being rejected as State Secretary of Agriculture by that partisan legislature, I was elected to serve in the state legislature. And now I'm in the state legislative body that had rejected me. And I've been able to reach across the aisle and work with them when it comes to providing tax relief, when it comes to providing funding for roads and bridges, for broadband, for economic development, job training programs. The thing is this, is I've demonstrated I can work. I can demonstrate the fact that, I'm willing to put my own job on the line if necessary, if it's appropriate. But at the same time, you can't hold grudges. I mean, you cannot hold grudges here. You need to recognize the fact that we're given an opportunity to serve the public. The public has put a level of trust into us. And I value that. I absolutely cherish that. And so I will fight hard for the people of this district. I'm very proud of the people here in the 32nd Senate District. This is the Driftless region. It is one of the most beautiful geographic areas in the entire North American continent. But the thing is this, I also recognize the fact for us to continue to move forward as a community and as a society, we have to put aside our differences on big, important issues. And I thought it was important that we put aside our differences to invest in broadband and in transportation and make sure that our hardworking middle-class people had a tax cut. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to not stop fighting to make sure that we've got expanded healthcare opportunities and education opportunities.
Finally, our last principle is the importance of representing collective interests of constituencies. And you've no doubt seen the graphs that have shown the increasing polarization. So as where the parties used to overlap quite a bit, many people that they've moved apart, so there's less of a middle. In that kind of context, has a member of Congress, what actions could you take to demonstrate that you're really interested in representing the interests of all constituents and not just your party's interests?
Well, that's a great question, and I will say this, is that I think it's very important that the National Democratic Party, because we have a two-party system right now, for good or for bad, we have a two-party system. And I am running for Congress as a Democrat. I am a Democrat in the Wisconsin State Senate. And I think it is important that members of the Wisconsin State Senate, as far as Democrats, know that there is a voice for the people in rural, western Wisconsin, in the Driftless region. And I've been that voice. And I think it is imperative that the National Democratic Party recognizes that they need a voice from rural, western, and central Wisconsin to fight for people that live in these small communities, that get up every single day and try and put food on the table for their kids before they rush out the door, the kids to school and them to work. But yet at the same time, they have enough desire in order to give back to their community by participating in community celebrations. Those are small town values. Those are our values. And I want to make sure that the National Democratic Party recognizes that who we are and what we're all about. But I also want to make sure that my Republican colleagues, may they be in the Wisconsin State Legislature or may they be in Congress, recognize the fact that, don't just typecast, don't just paint all of us with a broad brush. Recognize us as human beings and recognize the district and what we're trying to do in this district. We're trying to grow jobs in this district. We're trying to make sure that our families have opportunities for their children to succeed and that they can succeed. This is what we're trying to do. And so, I just think that there's way too much partisanship right now that's in our politics. Way too much. And I think the most important thing that we can do in this election is focus on the needs of this district. And one of the things that really separates myself from my Republican opponent is that he only talks about national issues. In fact, if you turn on a particular cable news station, that's what you're going to hear his talking points come from. I think the people of this district want better. They have demanded better, and I will do my very best in order to make sure that they know that I will work for their interest. I'll fight for their interest, but I'm also someone that was willing to reach across the aisle and work together in order to better our lives. And the thing is this: it's about temperament, it's about judgment, and it's about character. And that's what the people in this district are looking for in their member of Congress. And I am confident that between myself and my Republican opponent that people recognize that I've got the temperament, the judgment, and character to serve.
How would you respond to constituents who might be upset if you took a position that was in the best interests of Western Wisconsin, but was contrary to what the National Party was doing? How would you respond to constituents that criticized you for not representing just Democrats?
Well, and that's that has happened in the past, and I expect that'll probably happen again. I will always put the needs of this district first, and I will do that by listening to the people of this district. And the thing is that I will also make sure that I share to my Democratic colleagues, why I am taking the position that I am taking. And I will share that when I come home here. When I'm home here, I'm always back home in town hall meetings and other public forums, why I took the vote I took. But my goal here is to make sure that the people of this district feel that they're being heard and their voice is being considered. And I realize that it's divided out there, but I also firmly believe that people are looking for a sense of calmness. They're looking for a sense of honesty, a sense of truthfulness. They want someone that's steady, that is not going to go to Washington, D.C. and burn the place down, but instead is going to go to Washington, D.C. and is going to fight like heck to make sure that the people of this district, we're getting our fair share, but also someone that they can feel proud of, that is there working for their interest.
Is that how you'd respond if there's pressure from other legislators and senior party members too? Because we know there's going to be quite a bit of arm twisting, and there's there's incentives, right, to toe the party line. What do you do when you're from a purple district?
Very
right?
purple, very
Yeah,
purple district.
we know what's going on with Joe Manchin right now,
Right.
and he's getting all kinds of
Yes.
pressure. How do you handle that pressure that we don't see, but is taking place kind of behind the scenes in Washington?
Well, I think you need to be transparent. I think you need to be upfront. I can't explain the decision-making that Senator Manchin made, but I think you need to be absolutely upfront and transparent about, if there is, a difference between a national perspective versus your specific state or your district. You need to be frank about it. You need to explain the situation that you have. You also need to come home here and you need to meet with your constituents, meet with your community leaders, and share the pressures that we're having here, and to be able to talk about it. And you also need to be able to, have a say at the table. And that is, you need to be able to fully explain what are the reasons why you're opposed to a particular bill or why you support something that may or not be as supportive by your political party colleagues. You need to be able to share that. And so communication is so very important with it, but also, being in touch with your constituents, because but you have to be transparent. You have to be upfront what you're looking to do. When I got elected to the Wisconsin State Senate, I was absolutely upfront. You can't overpromise, but what you can say is this, is that, I'm going to work hard for infrastructure investment. And we were able to get new funding for roads and bridges and for broadband. I was very upfront. I was only one of 3 Democrats to vote for this measure. But I told my constituents I was going to work hard for that. I also was very clear with the constituents when I ran for office that I was going to fight hard for Badger Care expansion, Medicaid dollars, additional dollars that come back to the state through Badger Care. And the thing is that I haven't been able to get that through the legislature. And so I've been very clear with the constituents as well as with my Republican colleagues, like, hey, I'm not going to give up on this. We're going to continue to try and move forward here. So, it's about it's give and take, yes, but it's about communications. It's about transparency and being truthful. And what are your end goals? You can't just move the goalpost or whatever the saying is. I mean, you have to have an end goal. And what is your end goal? And once that end goal is met, then you have to make the decision. And the decision, in my opinion, needs to be one that is based on truthfulness and transparency and sticks to the values of who you are. And again, that's what's so very important, is the values of who you are as an individual. And again, I'll just say it. I mean, I'm from this region. I met my wife here at a 4-H leadership luncheon. We raised our 2 children here. I understand the people of Western Wisconsin and the values of Western Wisconsin, and I'll put those values forward in Congress.
Well, thank you, Brad. And
Thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure to talk to you.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Appreciate this. Thank you.
And Lee, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Again, we'd like to thank the members of Community for their support, the Crosse Tribune, WKBT News 8000, WIZM Radio, and WXOW, as well as LeaderEthics. We also would like to provide our thanks and appreciation to AVS La Crosse for the technical program support from today. And a very special thank you goes out to Brad Pfaff and Richard Kyte for their thoughtful and informative and engaging discussion today. To all, thank you and best wishes.